On a Tuesday morning in March, a woman named Priya Menon sat cross-legged on the floor of an empty apartment in Dubai Marina, surrounded by bubble wrap and the skeleton of a life she'd spent 6 years building. The balcony overlooked the yacht club. The rent had just been raised for the third time in 18 months. Her daughter's school fees had crossed the 100,000 dirham mark, and the promotion her husband had been promised twice had quietly evaporated when his company relocated its regional headquarters to Riyadh. She wasn't angry. That's what struck me when I read her account. She wasn't bitter. She was just done. Dubai didn't break its promise, she wrote in a relocation forum. Priya's story, on its own, means nothing. One family, one moving truck. One cancelled residence visa. But when you pull back, when you look at the exposed wiring behind the glittering facade, her story stops being personal and starts being systemic. Because Priya isn't an exception. She's a data point in a pattern that's accelerating faster than anyone in Dubai's leadership publicly admits. Between January and September of 2025, more than 42,000 residence visas were cancelled. In Dubai alone. A figure that, according to analysts tracking UAE immigration data, represents a 38% spike compared to the same window the year before. Now, the Dubai Statistics Center doesn't publish monthly immigration breakdowns the way it trumpets tourist arrival numbers. That asymmetry is deliberate, but the secondary data tells the story anyway. International school enrollment across the emirate dropped by an estimated 11% year over year, based on figures compiled by education consultancies operating in the Gulf. Demand for outbound shipping containers from Jebel Ali surged by 27% in the first half of the year. And one-way flight bookings out of DXB, Dubai International, climbed steadily through Q2, with the most popular destinations being Mumbai, London, Manila, and increasingly Riyadh. None of these numbers made headlines. None of them appeared in the glossy investor presentations Dubai rolls out at every expo, every summit, every real estate launch. And that silence, that gap between what the data says and what the narrative promotes, is exactly why this story matters. Ask 10 expats why they left, and you'll hear 10 different stories. A British couple priced out their Jumeirah villa. A Filipino nurse whose employer cut housing allowances. A South African entrepreneur who watched 3 clients relocate to Saudi Arabia in the same quarter. A Lebanese family who simply couldn't afford the combination of rent, school fees, health insurance, and grocery inflation anymore. But underneath every single one of those stories, you'll find the same 3 fractures. The first fracture is financial. Dubai's cost of living has undergone a dramatic recalibration since the post-pandemic boom. Rental prices in key residential areas, Marina, Downtown, JBR, Business Bay, surged between 20 and 40% in 2024 alone, according to property data from CBRE and Bayut. For context, average expat salaries during the same period grew by roughly 3 to 5%. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. And it's widened further by the introduction of corporate tax in mid-2023. A modest 9%, yes, but symbolically enormous for an emirate that built its entire recruitment pitch on the phrase tax-free. The ripple effects hit mid-tier expats hardest. The ISA middle managers, the teachers, the engineers, the small business owners, the people who actually run the city. They're the ones doing the math at their kitchen tables and realizing the equation no longer works. The second fracture is structural. Dubai's Golden Visa program, once positioned as the ultimate retention tool, a 10-year residency for investors, entrepreneurs, and skilled professionals, has reportedly become harder to navigate. Multiple immigration consultants working in the UAE have described a tightening of eligibility criteria, longer processing times, and a general atmosphere of bureaucratic friction that didn't exist 2 years ago. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's competing visa programs have become faster, more generous, and more aggressively marketed. The kingdom's premium residency scheme now offers permanent residency with fewer financial thresholds. And Riyadh is spending billions, literally billions, to recruit the exact professionals Dubai spent decades attracting. The third fracture is psychological. This one doesn't show up in spreadsheets, but it's arguably the most corrosive. Burnout. The relentless performance culture. The isolation of living in a transient city where your neighbor changes every 18 months. The creeping realization that you're building equity for a landlord, not for yourself. Several expat community surveys conducted through platforms like Internations and Expat Woman in late 2024 and early 2025 showed a measurable decline in quality of life and sense of belonging ratings for Dubai. One survey noted that nearly 60% of respondents were actively considering or planning a move within the next 2 years. That number, even accounting for survey bias, is staggering. Here's something most people don't understand about Dubai. It doesn't just want expats. It needs them the way a hospital needs blood donors. Roughly 85% of the UAE's population is foreign-born. In Dubai specifically, that figure is even higher. Some estimates place it above 90%. The entire economic model is built on a constantly replenishing cycle. Attract workers, extract productivity, collect rent, cycle in replacements. The construction sector, the hospitality industry, the retail economy, the financial services hub. All of it depends on a steady inflow of human capital willing to trade routes for opportunity. When that inflow slows, or worse, when the outflow accelerates, the effects cascade. Not immediately, not dramatically, but structurally. Vacancies rise, consumer spending contracts, small businesses lose customers, restaurants close, malls thin out, schools consolidate classrooms, and every empty apartment represents not just lost rent, but lost spending at the grocery store, the salon, the gym, the coffee shop downstairs. The multiplier works in reverse, and it works quietly. Dubai's government is not oblivious. In fact, recent policy moves suggest a growing awareness of the problem. The emirate has expanded freelance visa options, introduced retirement visa categories, and launched new long-term residency pathways for remote workers. These are smart moves, but they're also defensive moves, reactions to a reality that's already shifting beneath the surface. And the core issue, the runaway cost of living that's pushing out the middle class, remains largely unaddressed. You can't solve an affordability crisis with visa innovation alone. There's a private Facebook group with over 190,000 members, all current or former Dubai residents. And if you scroll through the posts from the last 6 months, a pattern emerges that no tourism campaign can paper over. We loved it here, but we just can't justify it anymore. Our entire social circle has left in the past year. The vibe has changed. It used to feel like a possibility. Now, it feels like a machine. We moved to Lisbon. Our rent is a third of what we paid in JBR, and our daughter can walk to school. These aren't bitter rants. They're measured, often affectionate, sometimes heartbroken reflections from people who genuinely tried to make Dubai work, and couldn't. The relocation consultants see it from the operational side. One Dubai-based firm reported a 45% increase in outbound relocation inquiries in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. Another, specializing in corporate moves, noted that 3 multinational clients had shifted their regional base from Dubai to Riyadh within a single quarter. The conversation has changed, one consultant told a Gulf business publication. 2 years ago, everyone wanted to come here. Walk through JLT on a weekday afternoon, Jumeirah Lakes Towers, once one of the most densely packed residential clusters in the emirate, and count the for rent signs. They hang from balconies like flags of surrender. One residential tower in Cluster D reportedly had 30% of its units vacant by mid-2025. Across the district, a community that once thrummed with the noise of families, food delivery riders, and weekend brunches has grown noticeably quieter. The Filipino supermarket on the ground floor of one tower closed. The Indian restaurant next to it is open 4 days a week instead of 7. The children's nursery on the second floor consolidated from 3 classrooms to 1. This isn't a crisis you can photograph from a helicopter. There's no dramatic skyline collapse, no cranes toppling. It's subtler than that. It's the slow dimming of a neighborhood, the gradual thinning of a community, the steady erosion of the human infrastructure that makes a city feel alive. And it's not just JLT. agents working in International City, Discovery Gardens, and Dubai Silicon Oasis, the more affordable corridors that house mid-income expat families, report similar trends. Vacancy rates climbing, lease renewals are declining, tenants negotiating harder, or simply not renewing at all. The demand that does exist is increasingly from short-term visitors and Airbnb-style operators, not families putting down roots. That shift, from long-term residents to transient occupants, changes the fabric of a neighborhood in ways that compound over time. Riyadh. That's the answer nobody in Dubai wants to hear, but it's the one that keeps showing up in the data. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 program has transformed the capital from a conservative backwater into one of the most aggressive talent magnets in the Middle East. The entertainment sector alone has generated tens of thousands of jobs. NEOM, the Red Sea tourism megaproject, and the Diriyah Gate development are pulling architects, engineers, marketers, and hospitality professionals from across the region, many of them straight out of Dubai. Riyadh's cost of living, while rising, remains significantly lower than Dubai's. And the social reforms, women driving, mixed entertainment venues, concert culture, loosened dress codes, have dismantled many of the lifestyle objections that once kept Western and South Asian expats anchored to the UAE. It's not just Riyadh. Bangkok has seen a surge in digital nomads and remote workers fleeing Gulf living costs. Lisbon and Porto have become magnets for European expats who once chose Dubai for its sun and tax advantages, but now find Portugal's golden visa and lower cost of living more sustainable. Even Oman, quiet, underestimated Oman, is picking up families who want the Gulf proximity without the Dubai price tag. The competitive landscape has fundamentally shifted, and Dubai is no longer the only game in the region. It's not even the cheapest. Now, to be fair, Dubai has enormous structural advantages that aren't going anywhere. Its airport is the busiest international hub on Earth. Its logistics infrastructure is world-class. Its regulatory environment for business setup, while imperfect, is still more streamlined than most competitors. And the lifestyle, the beaches, the dining, the safety, the sheer ambition of the place continues to attract high-net-worth individuals and ultra-premium tourists. The very top of the pyramid is fine. The penthouses are still selling. The Michelin-starred restaurants still have wait lists. The billionaires aren't leaving. But cities don't run on billionaires. They run on the middle. The teachers, the nurses, the accountants, the small business owners, the IT managers, the logistics coordinators. These are the people who fill the apartments, enroll the children, buy the groceries, and sustain the thousands of small businesses that make a city functional. And these are precisely the people being squeezed out. So what happens if this trend continues? If the middle keeps thinning? Dubai has weathered downturns before. The 2009 financial crisis, the 2020 pandemic, and bounced back stronger each time. The optimists point to this resilience as evidence that the current outflow is cyclical, not structural. Maybe they're right. Maybe rents will plateau. Maybe salaries will catch up. Maybe the visa reforms will stem the bleeding. But the pessimists, and there are more of them now than there were a year ago, see something different. They see a city that's optimized for attraction, but not for retention. A city that treats its population as renewable rather than investable. A city that's built extraordinary hardware, the towers, the malls, the islands, but hasn't invested enough in the software. Affordable housing, public education, healthcare access, community infrastructure, a path to permanent belonging. And here's the part that should worry Dubai's planners most. The people leaving aren't failing. They're not being deported. They're not going bankrupt. They're making calculated, rational decisions that the numbers no longer add up. They're choosing to leave. And when your most capable, most productive residents start choosing to leave, not because they hate the place, but because somewhere else simply makes more sense, that's not a downturn. That's a structural signal. Priya Menon is in Bangalore now. Her daughter is enrolled in a school that costs a fifth of what they paid in Dubai. Her husband took a slight pay cut, but their savings rate tripled. She posted a photo last month. Her balcony, smaller than the one in Marina, overlooking a garden instead of a yacht club, one family, one moving truck, one cancelled visa. Multiply that by tens of thousands, and you start to see the outline of something Dubai can't market its way out of. This is an evolving story. The data shifts quarterly, the policies adjust, the human decisions compound. If you want to follow what happens next, whether Dubai adapts or whether the exodus deepens, subscribe. We'll be tracking this closely. And if you've lived in Dubai, if you've left or you're thinking about it, drop your story in the comments. Because the official numbers won't tell this story. The people living it will.